I'm really excited to hear everybody's comments up here. I think, to me, change management is a superpower. If you can successfully implement change, that's something that significantly differentiates any business, whether you're talking technology or some process in the chem shed or fertilizer shed or in your fleet management process. And so really excited to hear about how things have been going with AgVend in terms of implementation with these individuals, as well as other technologies or other new changes that they've implemented as well. But before getting started, they brought up a good comment to me to really understand how we can level set some of the commentary, conversation, and that sort of thing. And so, want to try to understand kind of three different levels in the room. So, raise your hand if you're live with AgVend currently within your operation. Okay, so pretty significant group. How many are about 3 or 4 months out from launch? You? Anybody undecided or over 6 months away? Okay, so there's a few there too. So hopefully that helps level set things a little bit. But before getting started, even I wouldn't mind just hearing if each of you could just quickly give a quick breakdown of what your business, what you guys do at your business, and a little bit about your location.
Good. Drew Garretson, Ceres Solutions. We're a regional cooperative based out of west central Indiana and cover about 550 miles from southwest Indiana to northern Michigan, primarily in the agronomy and energy business and a little in the feed business, and about $1 billion worth of revenue between all of our operations.
Good afternoon. Casey Graner, Senior Vice President of Agronomy at Central Farm Service. We're a full-service ag retail cooperative, mostly across southern Minnesota and a little bit into northern Iowa. We do a little bit of feed business over into South Dakota. Similar revenue, about $1 billion. Actually, this year will be about $1 billion revenue cooperative in that space.
Cool. Good afternoon. Neal Horrom with Mercer Landmark. First off, I just want to thank AgVend for putting this conference on. So I think it's great that we bring together like-minded people to learn, collaborate. Back to some of the points that Brett made this morning. I think this is maybe where we take steps forward and solve problems. So Mercer Landmark is a farmer-owned cooperative in Northwest Ohio. I'm about 1.5 years into the cooperative system. Spent a long time on the other side in ag retail. We have a pretty significant feed business, energy, grain, agronomy, and logistics business unit.
Awesome, thanks guys. So I guess we'll kick it off, and I'll maybe start with you, Neal, to kick it off, and then we can come back down this way. But at a high level, obviously technology is only as successful as the teams make it. And so when you think about how your team handles change, how do you guys think about implementing that change and rolling out a new solution? What's your starting point when you begin to think about change management and implementation?
Yeah, sure. I think, it starts probably before you select the solution. So, what I've always tried to do is get my team involved in that process. So if we've identified a pain point, if we've identified a need or a certain type of experience that, we want to create for our employees or our customers or solve a problem internally, and we think technology or maybe a process change has a fit for that, I really usually start off trying to get the people that are as close to that as possible involved in the process of solving the problem. I think that goes a long ways down the road when you do get ready to implement a solution, that you've got people that believe in it, people that are probably influencers in your organization, and that can kind of carry the ball forward when you get ready to launch something.
That's awesome. Casey, any comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what's the problem we're going to solve is always step one. I think, as with any journey, there's a roadmap, and I think there's, at least the way I try to consider it is there's, what's the itinerary? So where are we going, and then what are the expectations? It's kind of no different than when you set out with your family on a road trip. Okay, when are we leaving? Where are we going? Where's the stops for potty breaks? As you can tell from my socks, I got 4 young kids, so there's a lot of those. Like, what time should we be there, and then what are our expectations? So just making sure that that whole roadmap is understood by everyone, and from an expectation level, what are we going to be holding everyone accountable to, both leadership to everyone executing it on their level, or even back our way to make sure that we're delivering on the promises that we set out in that roadmap.
I would say for us, it really comes down to our strategic initiatives. We've spent a lot of time and effort every year developing what are the things that our organization is going to focus on, both internally and with our customers. And I'd say that every decision that we make ultimately comes back to those 3 or 4 strategic initiatives, and if they're not solving for one of those things, it's not important. It's scope creep in our view. So let's make sure that we have them lined up to what's important. And I think we'll probably talk about this a couple different times, Shane, but for our organization, it's really important that our team understands why we're doing what we're doing. We tend to be really good at execution, tend to be really good at what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but sometimes we miss the why. And I think that's something that when coming back to Ceres, is something that every time we're in front of our team and helping them through this level of change, we start with the why.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that came through a little bit this morning too, with having a vision, talking about the why. And when I think about that too, I might go, I don't know, I'll see what you guys have for your thoughts on this. And I know Casey touched on accountability. And when I think about vision, why, accountability, I tend to think about the incentives and that sort of thing when it comes to how do you actually engage staff in a more meaningful way. Maybe it's monetary, maybe it's something else entirely. I'm just curious, maybe we'll start this way with Drew, if there's any incentives that you guys think through, whether that's, maybe it's trips, maybe it's just something that comes down to a party at the location level, maybe there's bonus structure, but just curious how you guys think about that.
Are you reading my notes over there, Shane? 'Cause one of the advantage I was sharing at lunch is we haven't launched this thing yet. We're really close, Ben, to getting this thing off the ground, but I've learned a lot by just listening to a lot of the folks in the room and asking a lot of questions on what we've learned or what you guys have learned, and so it's been very beneficial to me. So I would say that incentives drive behavior for sure in our organization, and really I think about it in kind of 2 buckets. One of them is we have to make it more convenient for our customers to do business with us, and we have to make it easy, and for our sales team. And then we also have to have this foot on the brake thing too, that we have to be more efficient. We just have got to be more efficient with the resources that we have. The resources that we have are slim, and we've got to make sure that we utilize them to its fullest capabilities. So, I would say to be determined still from our perspective on how we incentivize these things.
Perfect. Maybe I'll go over to you on that, Casey. I know you guys are 2 years of AgVend. Just curious what worked for you guys, if there was anything from an incentive perspective or anything along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. So, not just about 2 years live on the portal with our team. I'm jealous of you, honestly, because I'm not sure that we did it perfect as we rolled out. We sure put our best foot forward with it on trying to get people excited about logging in. We started from an incentive standpoint way back when we did a 12 days of Christmas campaign, because we went live pretty much around that Christmas time, and so we thought, hey, what a great way to get our customers to log in by sending them 12 days in a row some sort of coupon or offer. I mean, the first day, which was the big one, was a free Carhartt jacket. Cost us like $15,000 because we had all these Carhartt jackets. So we started with a big incentive, and so you kind of picked off the low-hanging fruit right away. And then it quickly became apparent, okay, all those early adopters, they're in, they're bought in, they're using it. Now what? You got to capture the ones that are the bulk of your business too. And so we really worked well with our partnership manager at AgVend on what are the 3 things every business quarter we want to accomplish, kind of back to that roadmap, that itinerary. And then, whichever one of the sub-geographical teams, our business, would, achieve that benchmark, had a little incentive. I think we were giving out $100 gift cards to those sub-regional teams of salespeople, and try just, not trying to consume the whole thing at once. Don't eat the whole elephant at once. Just figure out where the benchmarks are, reward those that hit them first, and then those that lag in, it becomes the stick, not the carrot a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. That's some great insight on just some of the little things and how to manage around that. And Neal, curious if you have any experiences around that incentive side of things.
Yeah, not so much. I just counted on everybody hating our statements and our invoices so much they'd all want to just sign up and be good to go. And actually, we got some of that. So we're kind of at a point where we launched. We started with a small group, and then we kind of just did our general invitation across the board. And so we've kind of segmented out certain groups of customers that represent a certain amount of our business that we want on the platform and engaged. And so we're just kind of at that point where we're getting ready to probably push our teams a little bit harder to go out and walk those customers into the platform or onto the experience. So. No, it's good to hear some of those suggestions. We haven't done anything like that to this point.
No, I think super interesting to hear like what some of those incentives look like to the customer, to the staff. I think there's two different levers you can start to manage around that from an incentive perspective. So it was really interesting to hear. And maybe this will be zeroed back in on Casey, but what would you have done differently when it came to the rollout and the implementation, or any stories you can share around really quick takeaways for everybody in the audience?
Yeah, I think I would have gone back in time and tried to promote the vindication of it from those early adopters that, the first time they used it had that light bulb moment, like, oh, wow, this is going to make my life easier, specifically from an internal standpoint of, giving that testimony internally. We waited and kind of hoped that, I shouldn't say hoped, we were still maybe a little skeptical of how valuable it was going to be. I mean, we had never had a digital offering that went really well. It was always painful. We were always waiting for the damn thing to break down or glitch or create a customer service nightmare because we shared the wrong information. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that's where we were. And so now, hindsight being 2020, I'd have 100% confidence day one to go full send, and take some of those people that had those early experiences, get them mic'd up, get it through our intercompany communications, and say, hey, I just used this feature of that portal here, and here's how much easier it made my life. Because once we started doing that, we noticed more growers logging in because our sellers were taking their phone and doing it for them. And we noticed a lot more adoption internally just because, it's a pretty flattering thing to steal someone else's idea, but, they're competitive. Salespeople are competitive. And so we really kind of feasted on that.
That's awesome. Some gamification kind of things going on there. I love it. And it's just interesting to hear the confidence, because I know how it is in deploying digital technology and the concerns there. And, Drew, you guys are at a little bit different point within your organization in deploying the AgVend solution. Just curious, when it comes to your team, some of the apprehensions, or are there any apprehensions from the team? And then curious if you've started to, converse it with customers at all, and if they have any apprehensions or concerns.
Yeah, we're in the middle of that right now. Actually, we have a group of employees that are also customers, and they're kind of vetting the tool through the month of September here, and so we've just got that kicked off last week. So we'll see, but all indications are right now that everything seems to be pretty accurate, and a lot of positive feedback on the experience that we're getting. And I think that's what we owe it to our customers, and we owe it to our internal team to really elevate our customer experience. It's been hard to do business, really, with the retail channel, and sometimes we're constrained by technology, sometimes we're constrained by not willing to change or be agile enough to do those things. I just did the quick math. We have, 750 full-time employees or something like that. And we talked about digital adoption earlier. I thought that was really interesting. I just looked at their birth dates, made the assumption that if you were born after 1990, I'm going to call you a digital native, right? So you are comfortable with using the internet to help you. Harlan, you talked about this when you were up here on stage. And if you just say that, I think we have 20% of our workforce today that was born after the year 1990. So 80% of them are digital immigrants, meaning they've had to figure out how to use technology. And I'm just going to say that 25% of them are unwilling. Like, I'm just going to say it. Like, they are over the age of 60 and they're like, Drew, I'm not doing this. Like, it's just like this. You're making my life complicated. But if you just fast forward the clock and you say, okay, well, that, the churn, same number of employees, by 2030, we're going to triple the number of people in our organization that will be born after the year 1990. We owe it to the future of the organization to make sure that we invest in experiences like this. And I could say that you could probably model our customers to be very similar to that. So I think that's the information and data that we're looking at. Like, that's the why in the back end of this entire thing.
Yeah, I'm going to double click on that for a second, just on that group of 25% for a second that is a challenge. There's always going to be that group. Do you have any insights, or is there any things that you found to at least get them open to adopting, or working with a digital native, as you call it, to help support them? Or just curious if there's anything that you can shed light on in that regard.
We probably have very few success stories, to be honest with you. I'm not going to say that we have. I would say that this is the change management principle that I live by, is that we have got to make, it has to, like, whatever we're asking you to do, it has to make your life easier. If it does not make your life easier, it's not gonna happen. So we've been, pretty consistent in our way. Casey said it, like, we haven't always been that confident in the rollout of technologies at the cooperative level. Like, they haven't all gone well. Let's put it that way. And so our confidence is shaken enough to where it's, we maybe is stalling out on that because it's not. It hasn't made their life easier to this point, honestly.
Yeah. No, I think everybody in the room can probably empathize with that for sure. And, curious, Neal, if you have any comments around that when it comes to what were the biggest concerns from your team, and how did you work to overcome them?
Yeah, so just to make a couple comments on what Drew was saying. So I've always kind of lived by this principle, if you will, that, I don't want to get out in front of my agronomist, my sales team, with anything that I'm taking to the customer or delivering to the customer. So I've always tried to be very careful that they are at least aware and that they, know what we're going to roll out and present to their customers. From the smallest thing to something like, the customer portal. But I will say that, and there's a balance, and so you don't want to ever get out in front of your team, but your customers will also help pull your team to adopt. And so sometimes those people that are on your team that you think, oh, they're not interested, or they're probably not going to, be an early adopter, or they're not going to embrace this technology or this new process or this change. If it's something that their customer is going to benefit from, or something that their customer is interested in, most of the time that overrules their own personal feelings towards whether or not they're going to invest in learning how to use the technology or making the change. And so you got to know your team. You need to know your customers as well. But sometimes, you can generate some of that pull through and some of that adoption on your team with those people that, you probably aren't expecting it to occur with, by using their customers to, to kind of, pull them through, or I don't know if that's reverse adoption or what that is, but yeah, just to generate that interest from a different perspective.
Oh, it totally makes sense. I think that's a really cool perspective on how to really move things ahead with that. And so, we'll maybe even shift gears a little bit here based on that. I'm kind of, when I think about change management, I think about bringing new ideas forward, because you'll never have one person that has the best ideas to actually make something effective and deliver better outcomes. And there's this concept that I've always been pretty interested in, and it's called the HIPPO issue, which is the highest paid person's opinion always tends to win out. And so you guys obviously have teams that have a ton of smart people on them. How do you ensure that you're getting ideas out of your youngest staff to maybe your newest staff, just everybody there, to make sure that it's a true meritocracy and the good ideas come to the forefront to make sure you guys can get better outcomes from the change management process and the implementation process? So I'll maybe start with you on that, Casey.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough at our cooperative to have had the chance to make a lot of other changes prior to the digital change that we're talking about here today, just with some integration of some locations and changing up the size of the team and things like that. You know, we had gone through a merger, about 6 years ago, and just had to make some of those changes you normally do with a merger. And so one thing we tried to be very intentional about through that whole process was encouraging everyone that the best idea needs to win. And whether it came from myself, which I tend to love my own ideas, believe it or not. But you know, when you get in a room, whether it's 3 people or 30, everyone has the same equity in terms of bringing an idea forward. And then the rest of the group has to decide in unbiased fashion, okay, what's the best idea here and why? And so what I really learned was oftentimes the best ideas came from the people with the least amount of experience, because they had this ability to look at a situation in a more abstract manner, not unlike how when we've approached some things with the AgVend development team. I know Ellie's been in the room. Some of the questions that Ellie's asked me over the years has made me think, okay, he just had a better idea and it took him 5 seconds to formulate it, but it's because, you know, he's learning at it from a completely different perspective than what I've got, which has biases and preconceived notions and assumptions and things. And so just encouraging everyone, whether you're the CEO or whether you're a mid-level manager or whether you're the intern that, you know, can't even tie your shoes, if it's still the best idea, that must prevail.
Yeah, I like that, because I think the encouragement and there's obviously action that needs to be required in there, where for yourself as a leader in the room, it's saying, hey, you know what, Jane or John or whoever it is, that is a great idea. Let's take that and run, and really reinforcing that it's not just us talking about bringing ideas forward, but that they get heard, built on, and then implemented where it makes sense. So I love that perspective. Drew, any comments on that?
I was just going to say, be intentional about asking the questions to the field team, because and create a space for them to do so. We get so down in the weeds sometimes in operations and making sure that allocations this and that, we know how the specific active ingredient of this and like the right truck filter for like that stuff, make time. We tend to have on like a quarterly basis, we have a group of what we believe to be the influential people in all 3 verticals of our business together, and we have intentional questioning opportunity for them to in like roundtable group work things where we can kind of throw those things up on the board and kind of take the ideas from, and that's their opportunity to feed back to the leadership team on, well, what is it that we need to fix and how do we go about fixing it. That I always had a rule that if you're going to come to me and complain, you better come with a solution. And so those are those are some of the principles. The other thing that we're getting ready to roll out, that I'm pretty excited about, that's kind of the internal way and like processes and things. But I think one of the things in the cooperative space that we always have to continue to contend with, and also it's actually what brings a lot of value to our system, is that we are reverse owned. We're actually owned by the farmer, right? And their voice needs to be heard in this thing too. And so we're actually pulling together a group of I'm going to call it forward-thinking thought leaders. And this came out of some of the work that we did with Aimpoint on some 2040 stuff. But we said, well, who are the key farmers in our area that are going to be farming in the year 2040, and that we believe are kind of those really progressive, the left side of that curve that we can learn from, that we believe are going to be farming in 2040, and create opportunities to listen to them about where their business is going. Because we will intentionally react to where their business goes. That's what the model of the cooperative is. So I think 1, create a space to listen to your field team. 2, don't forget about your customers.
Yeah, I think not forgetting about the customer is such a good point, in that when you have the customer's best interest in mind, the best ideas do tend to come to the forefront, right? So, Neal, any comments on that?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, our CEO is fairly new to our organization, and I think the culture that has existed there for many years has been kind of the hippo. Is that what you said? Yeah. Concept. And so we're kind of going through a cultural transformation to create and allow for innovation and to kind of cultivate that, if you will. But I think part of that is that getting people to understand that it's safe to be able to have an idea and bring it, to their manager or to the leadership of the company. And then for us sometimes to, put aside our own thoughts and opinions about it and, go with it. And, what our culture, the 4 pillars of our culture are innovate, grow, develop, and perform. When we talk about innovate, we talk about, finding a better way to do something. And then, being able to iterate off of that. So if it fails, that's fine. Just learn from it and make it better the next time. And I think, establishing that and getting good at that is what we're trying to do. And we're not there yet, but we're hopefully going in the right direction.
Yeah, I really like your comment on the safe space too. Alexander, I think this is saying you've said, but something along the lines of, people don't care what you think until they know you care, something along those lines. I think that's one of the semi-cores of the AgVend culture, and so I think that's so important when it comes to people feeling safe before they will bring up an idea, because, our egos are one of our, most valued things. We don't want to put an idea out there where we can feel stupid, and so I love that safety comment. Maybe along those lines, and I'll maybe start with you, Neal. But if anybody else has a comment or a story, I think I like to look at things from. It's one thing to talk about all the good that you can do, and I think this kind of goes along with Margie's question earlier to me, where it was what should retail stop doing? But I like to look at the opposite of things. So do you guys have a horror story where you're like, we did this entirely wrong? Doesn't have to be specific to AgVend, but just implementing change and where it just went horribly, horribly wrong. So maybe, Neal, I'll start with you if you have one, or if not, open to Drew and Casey.
Yeah, sure. It's not much of a story per se, but, I would say, probably 2 of the biggest mistakes that I've made in the past we're kind of just this idea that, you have a great solution, you've got great technology, maybe you've got a killer app, and, you've invested all the time and energy in developing it, you know what it will do, you know it will solve problems, but you don't kind of give that why to the team, you don't have those influencers in your organization that are, helping you, drive adoption, and we used to say, you just kind of throw it over the fence. You're like, okay, well, we did this. We built this great thing. There you go. You guys go use it. And so we've created some really good stuff in the past, or taken some really good tools and solutions. Just because we haven't invested the time and effort to do all of these things right, we kind of just tossed it over the fence. And yeah, your early adopters, they pick it up, they run with it. But you wonder why you don't get past 10% adoption, 10% adoption. Oh, and we got to 11% and you're, 5 or 6 years in. So not doing all of the upfront stuff, I guess, would be the thing, and just kind of throwing it over the fence and expecting people to figure out how to make it pay for them is probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Start with the beginning in mind, or the end in mind, and kind of working backward instead of just kind of hobbling things together as you go, right? So, any other stories around just poorly executed implementation? Anything along those lines?
Never imperfect. I want to see how many people are awake and heard that. Generally pretty similar commentary, but I think probably just remembering from wherever you are leading whatever initiative that, if someone isn't following along with it, ultimately it's on you, right? You have to have kind of that extreme ownership of, you haven't done something in that change management sequence to not help this person see the light. Once you've checked every box and beat your head against the wall, then maybe it's okay to write that person off. But ultimately, with any initiative, at least ones that I've faltered on, it's been because I kind of thought I had a beautiful recipe built and handed them the recipe and just, didn't give them all the ingredients to go with it or whatever. And so I think it just comes back to recognizing whether it's us as leaders or the other leaders we depend on to disseminate through the organization, just not taking the ownership of the change happening. It ultimately is on us.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Drew, anything to add?
Yeah, I've been sitting here contemplating how deep we want to go into a horror story. But, if you don't do these things, I mean, how do you learn? I mean, that's.
I want to go deep.
Let's go deep on. So I started at Ceres a little over 2 years ago. When I first got there, I asked a lot of questions to the field team, to our senior leadership team, and to our customers. I think a total of about 157, if I counted conversations, asking them a lot of questions around what do they need, what are their expectations of us, like what do you want, what do you need, like all these things around, like how can we help you be better. And it was pretty adamant that there were 5 things that were like pretty consistent in almost all of those conversations. And one of them was like clearly the number one, and it was we need to be more operationally excellent. Like we drive past each other all the time on the road. So about a little over a year ago, I went on a road trip to visit Casey, visit a couple other co-ops. I went and visited Craig and started asking a lot of questions within the network of people that I know around how they tackle these things. And so I was all fired up that we were going to implement this a technology solution that was going to help us solve the world's problems as it relates to operational efficiencies. And then it just didn't work. I mean, I was going to be honest with you, like it just didn't work.
I'm glad it was time well spent.
Yeah, we learned a lot. But the thing I think about that is that part of that was probably on us because we didn't implement the right change management practices and hold people accountable and all the things in the right way. The other thing is like sometimes tech companies get scope creep and they start getting shiny object syndrome too, and they found something else that was super cool and they started just focusing on that and probably not as much time on what we were hoping that they would help us solve. So, man, it's tough to pick the right partners, and you probably are not going to bat 1,000 on that. I'm just going to tell you. But at the end of the day, that problem doesn't go away, Shane. Like it still exists, and we have to figure out how to solve it. And we get to go back up to bat to figure out how to solve that again. So.
Man, we didn't even plan for this, but my next question was actually right on around, and so maybe I'll put it back to you if you have any suggestions. You know, when it comes to implementing change, it is a team game. It's the team at the location level and the head office level. It involves the customers. It involves interns, all those different things. It also involves the partner and the technology companies that you might be working with to implement. So when it comes to selecting the right partner, what are some of the things you're looking for? What are some of the questions you're asking?
Well, I think one of the things that we've proven, and AgVend does an exceptionally good job of this, is surrounding you with really good people. And I think if I was an ag tech startup today, that one of the things that I see them missing is they get so excited about their technology and they think their technology is going to solve all the problems. They forget about the customer service and what it really takes to support the ag retailers and farmers. Takes people, and kudos to Alexander and Ellie for investing in some really good people here at AgVend, because they've helped us on the journey for sure. And if I was going to go back and do that over again, I would spend more time evaluating the people that we were going to be working with.
A deep kind of interview process, just like you're hiring your next number 2 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Casey, any comments on that?
I'd probably just echo it. I mean, we signed up to partner with AgVend based on the product we saw and the product alone, which is a beautiful product. But the reality is that it's been the people that we partnered with. Our partnership manager, Lena, standing in the back there, have to acknowledge her. We consider her part of our team. She comes to our internal sales meetings where all the secrets are discussed and in 100% transparent fashion, because we consider her part of our team. And I think that can't be understated, because we're just so used to you sign up for a digital offering or a software offering and they get you going, they back up and they wait for it to break, and then you call them and then they service you. Whereas with an AgVend partnership, it's an every week interaction. Not always, actually I think they probably push us more than we push ourselves, but it's a togetherness that had not yet experienced in the digital space.
Very cool. Yeah, that's good to hear. Neal, any comments to add there?
Yeah, I would echo what both of these guys said. Another thing for us was just the culture of the organization. So it ties a lot to people, but just kind of understanding, how they operate and their approach to working with their customers and understanding their business. Alexander sent us a couple of books when we decided that we were, going to start partnering with AgVend, and it really just kind of reiterated what we were already feeling about their organization, and it was really kind of like the, icing on the cake, or the cherry on top. It was like, okay, we made the right decision here. We're really aligned from a cultural standpoint, from an ownership, a leadership standpoint, and that's made it very pleasing and very. It's made the journey, even during the rough times, very, it's more bearable. And the other thing I would say is I never hear the team give excuses. If it's the person who's answering the help email, or Lena, who's also works with us, or anybody else, I've never heard them, give an excuse. So they take ownership, and like a lot of people have already said, they deliver, and those things just are, they're not common, unfortunately, but it's important to us.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, that culture side of things and holding themselves accountable. And, I think it kind of lends itself. I've seen Matt Coots, the innovative young farmer here from Canada, is a good friend of mine. And we talk to a lot of different startups. And when we talk to a lot of these startups, we talk back and forth around, what is their culture like? What is their senior leadership like? Are they attracting good talent? Are they setting the expectations properly? And I tend to see a lot of these companies that we see that are kind of fly by night, or they're, not having success. They tend to be product focused. They're trying to shove that product in that square peg in a round hole constantly, versus coming in and being the ones that are asking good questions, to your point, Casey, pushing you on things that you never really thought were there. And so I think that is such a good comment and call out around, you want to have companies and partner with companies that are more problem focused, customer focused, and really centered on trying to solve the issue at hand and make you more successful in doing so, versus building this product and just shoving it down your throat constantly. So I think we'll basically leave it there before opening up the questions. But with that said, I know you three have a ton of different experiences. So is there anything we didn't touch on when it comes to effectively implementing change that you wanted to comment on, Casey?
Shane, what you just mentioned, and then kind of just this whole partnership and continuous push. I guess one thing that I think people who have been with their portal as long as we have probably already seen this, I would imagine, and those who haven't yet will get there. Where when we got about a year in, it was past the honeymoon phase. It was past all that early adopter phase. It was back to the point of, okay, we just missed our first quarterly goal by a little bit, not a lot of it, and then we missed another one the next quarter by a lot of bit. And we stopped and we looked at ourselves and said, okay, what are we missing here? And it was our AgVend partners who were like, hey, here was your goal, you missed it. What do we got to do different? And that's what what we came. Lena, what do we call it? Do we call them adoption levels or proficient adoption levels? I think Alexander put it on LinkedIn one time too. But so we sat down in a room and said, okay, we need to find a way to measure the deficiency of the people that haven't yet adopted this thing, and then how do we get them the right resources to level them up? How do we help them self-identify in a certain bucket, basically levels 1 through 5. 1 is I remember my login and I use it for this. 2, 5 is I'm super user and could try to displace Lena at her job. And so, we sat down and said, okay, here's where they are. We disseminated that through the 3 sales managers of sit down with everyone, have them identify where they are truthfully. If they're trying to identify higher than they are just to impress you, put the phone in their hand, make them show you, and then let's again break this down to digestible pieces. And that to me was one of the single most impactful moments that I can look at now and recognize that was the AgVend team not taking no for an answer out of us, where I had allowed my mind to stray back to some of that other stuff that was talked about this morning, like buying fertilizer and buying chemical and managing an employee issue. They put it back in front of me like, hey man, you're not leading this thing right. You need to adjust course and do this different. And so that was just a great example of that.
Yeah, it's a really cool example. Drew, any comments?
I just had a quick story on how do we land that we needed to change our customer experience and use digital to do that. And I told you about that a few months when I first started at Ceres and asking a lot of questions. And one of our best salesmen actually had just experienced something that I think a lot of people in the room will be able to relate to. And this will kind of cement our whole conversation here. He was going to call on a prospect, a new customer that was not a customer of ours. And he'd been like on his third call, and Casey, like by your third call, you better be sealing the deal, right? So, this guy was really close to bringing a lot of business over to us, and the farmer asked the salesman, like, "Well, how's your statement? Like, yeah, how's like your monthly statement, Coley?" And he just looked at him, like, told him the truth. And I was really interested in like what he was gonna say. And he goes, "You know what? It's really shitty. Like it is not good." But I tell you what. And he handed the phone number of Gail at the office. Right? You just call Gail, and anytime you have a question on your bill, you just ask her. She'll be able to decipher it and be able to tell you exactly what it is that you owe. And at that moment, I was like, my gosh, our customer experience lays in the hands of how well Gail can interpret the bill. And that scared me. I'm not going to lie. So I'm like, we can do better than that. My gosh, like $1 billion in revenue and we have crappy statements. Like, come on. So then, we can digitize this process, right? So I think that's one of the things I'm most looking forward to is that now that salesman will be able to answer that question a lot differently than what he has before. And so, yeah, I thought that was a interesting story on kind of how we got here.
Hugely interesting. I think it's such a keen insight on just how to identify opportunities to enhance that customer experience. Like, where is there this clunky, inefficient process where it's not good for our people, that's not the most efficient way for them to actually be doing something, but then two, it's not effective for our customers and it's not supporting them to accomplish their goals. So love that story there. Neal, any comments?
Yeah, just real quick, and this came to me during one of the other discussions, but I think, your organization needs to have a perspective on digital and digital customer engagement, customer experience, and it needs to be like fully in. I mean, it needs to be part of your brand identity, if you will, and not just something that we're doing on the side to solve the problem with statements. I mean, that's a very legitimate problem to solve, but and we throw a couple of people at it. It needs to be embraced by the leadership at the highest levels within the organization. For us, our board is fully behind it, our CEO, all of our senior leadership, and they need to be on board and bought in and have ownership in it, early in the process, okay? Not as late adopters to the idea. So I'd encourage you, if you find yourself in that situation, go back to whoever your direct leader is and start having that conversation, because it will, when it gets tough, okay, or when it requires more investment or more energy or more time, and they don't have ownership and believe in what we're doing, then it'll get deprioritized, and that's probably the worst thing that can happen for your customers. So,
yeah, that's such a good insight. And actually, I'm supposed to kick it over to the audience for questions, but now that gave me a question that I get a lot that I don't have a good answer for, but I think it's super valuable to everybody in this room, because you mentioned getting this most senior levels bought in and engaged, and lots of the questions I get is, if you look at our industry, we've traditionally looked at, well, here's the business case. We're going to sell X number more tons of fertilizer, or be able to sell this many more biological products or whatever, so you can have your hurdle rate and you can really kind of map that out over a 2, 3, 5, 10-year period. When it comes to these less tangible ROIs, how do you go about engaging the senior leadership to get them bought in to invest hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to change and to involve technology and evolve that customer experience? Just curious your experience on that, Neal.
Yeah, sure. With this specific, organization that I'm with, I started off at the first annual board planning session that we went to, and I hadn't been on the team for very long, and so I stole a lot of content from Alexander's presentation or Faye's presentation, whoever, from AgVend, and used that and talked about omnichannel and started really at the basics. for our board, and to understand, what's the expectations from our customers, and that's going to continue to increase. What does this mean? Where are we at in this journey? And as we kind of moved, down our roadmap, our board were the first, our first customers to sign up and use the portal. And our board chair was the first person to make a payment on an invoice through the portal. And his comment was, it was Amazon easy, I think is what he said. So, sorry, Alexander. But so we started off really good. But, just having them involved and having them, understand kind of what we were doing at the very beginning. And I think, went a long ways. And they're some of our biggest fans right now. So
That's great insight, just getting it in their hands to experience it themselves. I love it. With that, I kind of selfishly took the first question, but want to open it up to the audience. Do you have any questions on change management specific to AgVend or anything otherwise that you're hoping to learn from these guys that have a ton of experience in moving things forward within their organizations?
So I have one. And this isn't pointed at AgVend. So as you're working through a project and you've got everybody on board, everybody's adopting, everybody's excited about it, how do you continually evaluate the success of that? And how do you make a decision if you have something that's not going in the right direction to stop? Because we're all really engaged and we really want to move something forward, but maybe the partnership or something's not working. How do you stop something before you get down the road so far that you've invested months or years of your time within your team?
So I'll just repeat that question quickly. And so if I remember that accurately, it's, how do you continue to move the change ahead if you kind of hit a wall, so to speak? How do you move some of the KPIs ahead? How do you know when to pull back? Is that kind of part of the question too? So I'm sure these guys have some good perspective on that. Maybe I'll lead with you, Drew, and we can go down for any other comments.
That's a great question, Matt. And I had somebody tell me once that they measure their life by complaints. So I'm like, okay, well, help me understand what that means. Like, if somebody's calling you and they're complaining about it, it's probably not good, but they're not going to let you know when it's going well. Okay, I just put it that way. So if you're not hearing anything, that's probably a good indication that everything's working pretty well.
So I think it comes down to consistency, and it comes down to communication, which drives so many things, well beyond even a digital change. I can think of a lot of times the past 2 years, we have an every other Tuesday morning call. It's scheduled for a half hour. It's a Zoom call. I'll use AgVend as the partner example here, where I opened up that call somewhat prepared, somewhat unprepared, because things were going well. I hadn't had a complaint. And I assumed, okay, this is going to be a 5-minute, Lena, what do you got? Oh, that. Okay, I've got this. Okay, check. See you later. See you in 2 weeks type thing. And those calls ended up going 45 or 50 minutes because we still had the different buckets that we knew we had to check in on every 2 weeks. And so I think if you're good enough at scheduling that type of a cadence out and then making sure you're covering all the bases every time, I don't think you ever get to a point where you go, oh crap, I've made a huge mistake. I think what happens is you get to much smaller, more manageable points that, okay, we need to course adjust here, or here's a person problem, or here's a tech problem, or whatever. At that point in time, you're on the journey, which sometimes involves a flat tire. Or running low on gas, but you never get to that catastrophic, oh crap, point.
Yeah, we did something similar this year. We just opened, so we have teams. So we just opened up a Teams call. It was once a week. It was 30 minutes. There was nothing prepared. It was for kind of everybody in our agronomy operations team to, it wasn't mandatory, but it was a time where, I was on the call or some other leader was on the call, and they could ask questions. They could share some issues that they were having and seeing if somebody else was having that issue or how they were resolving it. So I think communication constantly and kind of monitoring those KPIs and things happen, and so adjusting along the way, being able to have a platform that has some flexibility built into it, and maybe a structure within your organization that allows you to flex a little bit and adjust and learn as you go.
Any other questions? Matt?
How do you guys prioritize different change opportunities, or just make
Yeah, so the question is, how do you prioritize new opportunities and new change management within the organization?
I'd say for us as a member-owned cooperative, what's going to have the biggest customer impact first from their experience, and then also obviously P&L impact for us are the two biggest driving factors. Although these days it feels like the employee pain point factor, the pain in the ass factor, is much, much more important and kind of almost a third as opposed to 1, 2, and then a distant third.
Drew or Neal?
Yeah, I was just going to say it has to be profitable or advantageous for our customers. Like, that has to be the number one thing that we always pressure it back to. And I'd say, like, okay, well, if that's the case, then how does it fit against, like, does it fit into the strategy? Like, if it's out of that, then it doesn't make the priority. And we roadmap these things out, so we consistently have a 5-year roadmap on where we're going from a digital perspective. And 5 years out, like, from a technology perspective, is not that far away. But yet it is sometimes hard to actually lay out what we will be doing in 5 years from now. But it's a good exercise as well. So we tend to look back on your wins too. Like, when we start to say, well, is this something that we should be doing? We just recently did this as we ended our fiscal year. Look at what we did get accomplished during the last 12 months, because we did accomplish a lot. We tend to maybe get to celebrate that for about 5 minutes, it seems like, but just don't forget to look back on those things.
Totally. Neal?
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I mean, customer, centric, what's affecting your business. Sometimes, though, which is something that we've learned kind of going through this journey, especially with AgVend, we have some processes that are just legacy processes that are just not the best way of doing things, that we need to change and to make the experience better, or to help our managers or our leadership make better decisions. And so some of those things don't necessarily on the surface look like they affect the customer, but they do at some point. And so sometimes that drives maybe a little bit of an adjustment in that priority. The other thing too is just the bandwidth of your organization. So you may have a high priority item, but it requires a lot of bandwidth, change bandwidth, if you will, from your team that you just don't have available, and so you might have to adjust priorities based on that as well.
Any other questions from the audience? Oh, yep.
If you incentivize using the app, how did you keep your customers engaged after the incentive was over?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, if you incentivized the grower to download and use the app, how did you continue to engage them and keep them interested in using the app after that initial incentive was complete or done?
So what we did was basically just we scheduled out the entire year, kind of in a marketing calendar, and once we got past that first slew, which was just to get people to log in the first time, probably about every other month or pretty much every little season that you'd go out and sell something, there was some sort of an incentive that, frankly, from a P&L management standpoint, it was really easy to cover up, and make your money back on. It's anyone who does marketing knows how to work that. So it was for the customers that really enjoyed that. We still kind of have something that goes out, but we've really tried to mature their experience along by driving the engagement factors between them and their agronomist, and some of those formerly pain point things that we alleviated with them, just steering them towards that with educational material and things like that.
Neal, I know you said you guys didn't use much for incentives, but has there been anything that's worked for you guys in terms of keeping the customer engaged? Or is it just the product or anything?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of early, so I think a lot of that repeat engagement has been driven just by the product and the capabilities, primarily, paying their invoices and seeing that purchase history and that type of thing. So we'll probably have to go in that direction to drive some of the adoption that we want with some of those key customers, but so we haven't had much experience on that yet.
Gotcha.
Make sure at the end of the year, when everyone's meeting with their tax guy, which this year is going to be a big deal for that, make sure that the grower knows to pull out their phone and show their tax guy the app. We learned that one year 2. I wish we would have learned it year 1 because pretty much every banker or tax person's jaw hits the floor and goes, "Give me that."
Wow.
It's good insight. I think with that we were running a little overtime, but I think just quick comments from me. I'm taking notes up here myself just on the importance of accountability for staff, creating a safe place to ensure you get the best possible ideas to deliver the best outcomes from change management. Starting with a vision and a why and really engaging staff, I think is a really key one that these guys all brought up. And, getting buy-in at all levels, I think Neal's point on that was spot on to highlight. So hopefully everybody took a ton of different notes down like I did up here, but big thanks to these guys for joining us today and sharing their perspectives and insights on how to actually participate and successfully implement change. And let's give them a round of applause.